Hi everyone, this is David Blakey, and the name of this video is Python regular expressions grouping. This is really where we get to the fun part with regular expressions. Grouping allows us to do three things. And grouping can be seen in any regular expression where you see parentheses. So a Python group might look like this. You might say, this is what we're going to use today, D plus at the end of the line. Maybe you're starting with some spaces here, one or more spaces, maybe one or more word characters, and then followed by, at the end of the line, one or more digit characters. So once again, let's read this out. This particular regular expression would match on one or more word characters, followed by one or more spaces, followed by one or more digits, and all of that anchored to the end of the string, the string being searched. The one or more digits is grouped. Now, what are we doing when we group? We can be doing one of three things when we group. Grouping can be used for alternating choices. For example, this or that. We're using the vertical bar for that. Now, we don't need grouping if the only thing we have in the match is this or that, like this or that. That works perfectly. But if we wanted to say this is, and then either this or that, this is this or this is that, then we put parentheses around this or that. That would indicate that either one of those could follow this is. That's the first use of grouping. We use it for alternating choices. Second would be for quantifying a group. What would that look like? Well, we might want to say, I don't know, maybe our IP address. An IP address looks like something like this. Okay, as you can see, it's a recognizable pattern. Might be 2 or 3 or 1 letter or number in there. And it's separated by periods. Did I miss one? I think I missed one. One dot, wait, one dot, oh, to 1. Yeah, I think that's right. Oops, no H in there. So this would be an IP address. Well, I see a repeating pattern within this, and it's number, dot. So we might put in one or more digits followed by a dot. Excuse me, not parentheses around that. One or more digits followed by a dot, and then repeated multiple times. How many times do you see one or more digits followed by a dot? 1, 2, 3, 4. We can go ahead and say we want to see that 4 times. Yeah? Followed by, I guess, one or more numbers. We could be more specific and say between 2 and 3 digits, or between 1 and 3 digits, followed 4 times, followed by between 1 and 3 digits. Now the point here is not to get kind of caught up in all of the different characters that we have here. The point is to understand that when we say one or more, between 1 and 3 digits, followed by a dot, and then we put a quantifier behind it, we could put the plus sign, for example. Between 1 and 3 digits followed by a dot, and that whole group given a plus. In other words, one or more of this whole thing. That's what quantifying a group is all about. It's about taking any group of letters or characters or any sort of pattern whatsoever, putting parentheses around it, and then saying you could be one or more of these or 0 or more of these. For instance, we had that example from the handout. John Rockefeller or John D. Rockefeller. How could we quantify that the D plus, the D period space is possibly there or not? We could simply put a question mark after it. John space, D period space, quantified as 0 or 1. In other words, it may be there or it may not be there. And then Rockefeller. We'll, of course, want to backslash the period, as always. But see how we've taken the group and applied a quantifier to it. Excellent. So that's the second reason we might use grouping. The third reason, and by far the most fun, is the extraction. Extracting text. What would that mean? Well, if we had a pattern like this, we knew that there were numbers at the end of a string that we wanted to search, we might pull out what those numbers are. Actually create a copy of those numbers within the regular expression object so that we can extract it later on. Let's take a look at this in action. I'm going to hide this baby. And here's our old program from the previous video. What if we wanted to get the numbers at the end of each string? The numbers at the end of each string. Well, we could group them. Now let's look at this pattern. The pattern says one or more digits at the end of the string. Now you can see that some of these strings have digits at the end and some don't. Let's see if we can pull these out using the group function. For Meister and test strings, good, going through each one. And now let's, instead of saying if research, let's say match obj. Now we haven't talked about this before, but actually re.search returns an object if there's a match. If it doesn't have a match, it won't return an object. It'll actually return none. That's why we can say if research. Let's look at what that was before. If research. We might have assumed that research returns a true or false value, and that would be a reasonable assumption. After all, we're using the research in a Boolean expression. Is this true or is this false? But in fact, research returns an object, a particular object that we can call the match object. And it only returns that object if there was a match. If there was no match, it returns none. That's why we're able to say if match object, basically, if there was a match object returned. That's what we're really saying when we say if research. But we could split it out and say match object and then if match object. That would work just as well. And now our program should work in the same way as it did last time. Oops, looks like we made an error. Match object research pattern if match object. Oh, I see, no colon now because it's not an if expression anymore. Okay, it works the same way. You may remember this from the previous video. It's applying the digit character. Well, now it's applying the new pattern, one or more digit characters at the end of the string, to each of these test strings, and you can see it matches on many of them, but not all of them. Now let's take a look. If we wanted to use the grouping to extract, I can tell you right now that the parentheses being here actually results in an extraction. The match object actually contains what was matched. We're going to need to pull it out using a special method, but just the presence of the parentheses alone causes Python to extract whatever was matched for us. That is the digits at the end of the line. So let's do that. Okay, I'm going to remove all of this except for these nice hints. And I'll remove the quantifiers. And let's say, I think we can say digits equals matchobj.group, and then we put in a 1. Print digits. Sweet. Let's take a look. Okay, digits 2 and 2, digits 64, digits 4, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4. Let's take a look at our test strings again. In fact, why don't we print the whole string and then we can see what we matched on. This would be Meister. Okay, let's try that. Okay, string is DBB 2 and 2, digits is 2 and 2. String is MM64. See how I'm looking up here, right here. So string is DBB 2 and 2, and digits is 2 and 2. String is MM64, and the digits are 64. String is etc., etc. You can see it's pulling off each one. It's pulling off the digits off of each one. And then we get an error, and this was intentional. Look at the traceback on line 17 where it says digits equals match object group. Attribute error, none type object has no attribute group. Now I want you to pay special attention to this error message because it is central to many problems that students find on the battlefield when they're writing these programs. None type object has no attribute group. What exactly is that saying? Well, look at the error line again. It says digits equals match object dot group. If it's telling you that none type object has no attribute group, and you can see you're using or you're trying to use the attribute group from the match object, what it's telling you is that match object has no value, or that it has the value none, really. Let's just prove that by before we print. This is good debugging practice. Before we print the output, let's print match object and see what we get. I'm going to clear here and run it again. Okay, so we got a match object. You see how it says sre.sre match object? This is a special class that's used with the regular expression module. And it's basically a match object. We're calling it match object just for convenience. You can see that even Python calls it a match object, or more specifically, an SRE match object. The fact that it's called SRE doesn't matter to us at all. We should just learn how to recognize it. But the main point is that we get a match object and we see digits. We get a match object, we see digits, 64. We get a match object and we see digits, 4, 2, 3, 4, etc. We get a match object and we see digits 2. We get a match object and we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we get the error again. None type object has no attribute group. Now, what I don't understand is why I didn't see the match object first. Oh, my mistake. It should have gone here. The error was occurring at group, and it was before the match object. What I wanted to show was what match object is when we get this error. So we're getting back a match object from re.search. We're printing match object, and then we're calling group on match object, and that's obviously where the error occurs. The calling of group on match object. And let's again prove why that's the case, why we're seeing that error. Because you're likely to see it. And then also, I think I will add one more print statement to separate out the output. Okay, so we get our match objects and digits each time. And then finally, in the last go, we say none, and then the traceback. So why do we see none here? Because we printed match object, and match object has no value. It's not an object. It's a none type object is what it is. But it's not a match object. And the reason it's not a match object is because this pattern didn't match. Let's look again at the pattern. In fact, why don't we see which one it failed on? It was the one right after DBA 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which worked. Let's take a look. Remember, our pattern looks for one or more digits at the end of the string, right? One or more digits at the end of the string. So we're going to surmise that this pattern was not matched, and that's why we're not getting a match. Let's see. This was the last one that succeeded. Yes, there are no digits at the end of the string. They're anchored to the end. There are no digits. Okay, well then that's very clear. That's why it failed. It didn't match. When we tried to do an RE search, it didn't match, and we got back none here. And then we tried to call group on none. None type object has no attribute group. They call it a none type object because, as I mentioned to you before, everything's an object in Python. Almost everything is an object. And when RE search returns none, it's not returning some kind of null value, some kind of null literal. It's returning an object. It's called a none type object. And it's of the type none. It's a none type. And it's an object like anything else. So once again, Python strives to be utterly consistent in following a rule. And the rule is that there are no literals, there are only objects. And so therefore, when it comes to a none type object, Python simply creates, when it comes to a none value, Python simply creates a none type object. Okay, but great. We were able to extract the digits. So how are we going to solve this problem? Some of these lines match and some of them don't. And that's going to be the case in a large majority of the programs you work with that use regular expressions. How can we guard against this? Well, it's a little like the test that we did with looking for a dictionary key and saying if key in dict. We can simply test match object to see if it's true. If it is, then we'll print all these things. If it isn't, we won't print anything. Great. So now it's just going to skip over the ones that don't have a match and show us the others. So that's extraction with groups. We put parentheses around what we want to group and what we want to extract. And then we call group with an index number. But actually, it's not a regular list index number. As you can see, the first group is actually labeled number 1. What is group 0, you might ask? Group 0 is the whole match. So we could say print whole match, match object group 0, just to see what it is. And after we clear, oh, my mistake. Let's see. We didn't have a nice token in here. There we go. This should hopefully work. I hope it does. Yeah, whole match is 212. Oh, right. No. Yes, exactly. Actually, as it turns out, the 212, the number in the match is actually also the whole match. So we'll need to illustrate this in some other way. We will look for one or more letters, let's say. One or more letters followed by one or more digits. And the one or more digits is grouped. Let's try again. Okay, now, start again. Whole match, here you see at the top here, whole match of DBB212, right? That was the whole match. It matched on the entire string. MM64XX looks like it's doing almost the same thing. It's giving us the entire string. I don't know how else to... Let's see, I can also illustrate this by taking off the anchor. What would happen if we take off the anchor? What would happen then? We get more matches this time. And here, let's see, we're getting digits, DBA 1, 2, 3. Okay, well this one, which didn't match before, now matches because the first place that it can find one or more letters followed by one or more numbers, it does a match and it extracts the digits, right? So the whole match is just DBB2 and 2. This was the string, DBB24. This was the string, DBB24, ABCD, etc. But the whole match was DBB24. In other words, everything that was matched within the pattern. So you get automatic extraction even if you don't group, I think. Well, we should try to take the groups out and see what happens. And then I suppose we'll just take these two lines out so that they don't fail. So now the question is, if you do an RE search of a pattern on a string and you don't group anything, you can still call group 0, match object.group 0, as we're doing here. And if we call match object.group 0, as we're doing here, it'll give us the whole match. That is everything that was matched by the pattern. And as you can see at the top of the screen there, the pattern is A to Z, one or more letters followed by one or more digits. So that's grouping. That's grouping extraction, I should say. The other thing that I could show you having to do with this is groups. If we have multiple groups, let's say our purpose is to group first the letters and then the numbers, and we're interested in getting letters and numbers, then that means, and we'll take out the whole match for now, that means that the two groups will be numbered 1 and 2, right? If we have two groups, two groupings, right? Two groupings, parentheses, parentheses, that's our two groupings. In this case, we're saying find the NYU-like ID, that is one or more letters and one or more numbers, and then split them, basically split them apart so that I can have each one separately. Well, we use group 1 and group 2, and we can say, we can say letters is this, and digits is that. And you can just see how powerful this is. We're now able to extract whatever we please, split it apart, manipulate it in any way. It's really magical and exciting. And again, the way we're doing that is with a pattern that says look for letters, one or more letters, followed by one or more numbers. And if you find that, extract the letters and the numbers as separate extractions. And then we can use match object group 1 and match object group 2 to get them. The last thing I'm going to show you is just another convenience feature which keeps us from having to specify individual groups. We can use letters. We're saying basically letters comma digits equals match object group. Now I'm hoping that this is actually going to work, because sometimes I forget. And I might have to go to the handout if it doesn't. Let's find out. Okay, great, it did work. We got letters in the letters field, or the letters variable, and digits in the digits. We did that by calling matchObject.groups. We called specific groups. We called groups as a plural rather than group 1, group 2. When we call groups, we get back a tuple of the groups. So if there were 2 groups made, as you can see there were, then we'll get back a tuple of 2 values. And the 2 values are letters and digits, and we're copying them over by multi-target assignment to the letters and digits variables. So it's a little more convenient than calling group 1, group 2, group 3, which can be a bit tedious and time-consuming, but also there's something kind of more graphical about looking at letters and then digits. And then you look at the pattern, you say, I see letters, digits, I see. You don't have to count number 1, number 2. So that's matchObject.groups. Great. So I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know your feedback, and I hope it all made sense.